In November of 2023, the Swell Pod took a 10-day journey across 5 states, traveling 3,580 miles with one challenge in mind.
And that challenge was to interview 100 pleasantly rebellious humans to uncover deep truths about what it takes to create something that has never existed before, challenge the status quo, maybe even change the world.
This is the Kiln Road Trip, created and produced by the Swell Pod.
In partnership with Kiln, Moterra Camper Vans, and sponsored by Taurus.
I'm Spencer McKeown.
And I'm Josh Taylor, and together we're the co-hosts of the Swell Pod and your guides on the Kiln Road Trip. Follow along on the journey.
Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, follow the Swell Pod on social media, and subscribe to your YouTube channel at, you guessed it, the Swell Pod.
This is interview 53 of the Kiln Road Trip, and today we're at Kiln Boulder in Colorado talking with Taryn Davis. Taryn is a founder and strategist at TBD Strategies, where they look at continuous improvement, process, and strategy consulting. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. We hope you enjoy.
Well, Taryn Davis, welcome to the Swell Pod, the Kiln Road Trip. And, thanks for coming down here.
Mm-hmm.
And for being one of the 100.
Love it.
So thank you. So Taryn, could you just give us a brief overview of kind of who you are and what you do and what you're passionate about?
My name is Taryn Davis. I work with small business on process improvement and internal infrastructure development, mostly about thinking. Thinking is my specialty. So I really focus on how are we thinking about our businesses? How are our teams thinking about the business? How are they thinking about problem solving, and really working to bring founders into a place where they can scale the business without killing everyone involved. So,
oh my goodness, that was very concise, and I love the
That
fact
was
that you're
really good.
all about thinking. We're going to dive into what that really means in a minute. When did you think of this idea? How did you get to this stage?
it's been a progression. My bachelor's is in linguistics and English literature, which sounds completely unrelated, but linguistics is all about language, and we think in language. So it's useless to consider thinking without thinking about how language plays into that. I got my MLIS, Master's of Library Information Science, after having finished my bachelor's, and then I worked in small business for a period of time, in startups and whatnot. And then I got established in continuous improvement and change management, and that's where things really came together. So change management and continuous improvement are about how do we take what we have and do more with less, not to get rid of people, but more to allow people to be more effective at what they're doing, which is all rooted in language and culture. So full circle with all that. So the short answer to your question is, I think it's been a latent concept in my mind since my early 20s, but it came together probably about 10 years ago when I was working in CPG, consumer packaged goods, which is food manufacturing, and really understanding how systems work together to help people be effective with their work. So, and then I started my business 5 years ago.
Wow. And the last one, I know we're going to dive into what you're doing right now with this very unique kind of interesting way of approaching it, especially the language you're using. What was your background, like, from not background, but like childhood influences, parents, grandparents? I don't know. Like what? Tell me a bit more about
Excellent question. So, my parents are entrepreneurs, and my dad is an environmental consultant. So they started a business nearly 30 years ago, and I grew up in that business, just watching them run it poorly and well at different points. And they'd had businesses prior to starting that one, so they're kind of serial entrepreneurs. And the big question I have had from the get-go is, how do we do this better so people can enjoy their businesses? Because I watched my parents struggle in a lot of different ways. And in my family, there's 4 children, but the business was always the 5th, right? So it's really impactful to people in families, and just in the business, everyone's impacted by it. So I wanted to know, how can we do this better? How can people not be miserable working when we do so much of it?
And you thought those thoughts probably a little bit back then, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I liked how you used the word latent. Like, they were just, they were there, but you didn't know what to do with them necessarily. You didn't know it was going to connect to your future
right
experience, future thoughts and opportunities. But yeah, should we dive into some questions about how does that apply to now, and like what approaches you take to utilize what you've described with clients or customers or whoever you're working with? Or did you have a different question?
No, that's perfect. I'm interested in, the thinking, the change management, and the continuous improvement, and kind of what you're talking about with these businesses when you go in there.
Yeah. So change management, when I first learned about it, I was like, oh, that doesn't feel good, right? And there's a fine line between using change management to help a business and the people in it thrive. So getting rid of things that aren't serving us anymore, things that are obsolete, asking good questions, being effective with the questions we're asking, that part of change management I think is invaluable. The part of change management I find to be really dicey is when we use change management techniques to herd people in a direction that they might not agree with, but they don't have all the information.
100%.
So, and as a founder myself, watching business founders in a variety of disciplines and industries, most of them, and I can't say all because, but most of them want the best for their businesses and they want the best for their teams, and teaching them how do we help people work towards positive change and know what they're investing in without kind of getting to the slimy side of change management. Which is why I'm not a change management professional.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then continuous improvement I find is just so inspiring because the idea comes from just the art of seeking perfection, even though we know it doesn't exist. And I think that that's really inspiring because things can always be better. And if we know that we're always going to be working towards improvement and making things better, then it's never a failure. Like you're never failing, you're always just learning. And I find that to just be so encouraging, especially for people who are founders of businesses that just seem to have an endless source of energy, but they don't always know how to use that energy to make things better. They're just like, let's start a fire. And you're like, a fire might not be the right answer right now. So kind of crafting a better solution, so to speak. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, for sure.
It kind of fills you with a lot of optimism, the feeling of optimism when you can continue, you can take what might look like a failure and improve it, but you're talking about it actually practically, how do you make that as effortless as possible, that process to improve. We've been improving on these interviews, haven't we?
Continuously.
Didn't we start with the first interviews being 25? They were meant to be 15
We couldn't
minutes.
keep them to 15 minutes.
Oh, when I saw it, I was shocked. I was like, you guys are ambitious.
Yeah, it's insane. So, but
we've been iterating.
Yeah, for sure.
And we're getting there.
Yeah, I think we're getting there. So, I'm still trying to understand the thinking component.
Yes.
And it sounds, so I definitely want to like kind of test you with a question,
Great.
but I'm going to wait for a second. But the thinking mixed with the continuous improvement, and when you go into these businesses, let's say that they're about to make a change that might require what they would think to be the slimy change management, require maybe change of behaviors that they wouldn't naturally want to do themselves, and it's kind of against what they feel to be right. So like, help me understand what that actually looks like. What do you do when you go into those businesses?
Excellent question. So most of my work starts with strategy.
Yeah.
Strategy and process are inextricably linked, and most founders don't know that. And they're afraid of strategy because they feel like it's fluffy, and well, not fluffy necessarily, but it's like, how do you be strategic?
Yeah.
They don't like process because they feel like it puts guardrails that make them not be able to do creatively what they want. But without those two things, you can't get anywhere. So I start off typically looking at the strategy of the business. Do we have any processes in place? If so, are they working or not? All of that is tied in with the culture, and this is really where I address your question. Because if the business isn't ready to change, then we have some work to do to determine if the business can change. And that's where the founder, him or herself, is really critical. If the founder is not ready to change, then the business can't change. Yeah. So my work, I'm certified in change management largely because it's important to understand how humans approach change and feel about change. And some of the tools I think can be useful, but I'm looking at all of the change management, continuous improvement things as tools in a toolbox. And some tools are more applicable to other situations, certain situations than others. Like I wouldn't use a hammer to screw in a screw, so it's sort of that allegory, so to speak.
Yeah, that's interesting. Culture is an interesting one, especially, we've talked about this so many times. As it relates to changing cultures, the concept of designing cultures as opposed to emerging cultures. It's such a weird thing, I think. I've never really been able to really kind of wrap my head around that concept because I don't know if that's even possible. I mean, yeah, I don't think it is. Like,
I mean, the thing about business that we try to like really stick business in a hole, like,
yeah,
or sorry, we try to pigeonhole it is what I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
And when we try to pigeonhole business and the concept that we have, we forget that businesses are growing and
Yeah.
changing, and they must.
yeah,
They're not stagnant. And so the culture is not stagnant either. And one of the things I work with a lot of clients on is, how do you hire for fit? How are you building out your culture as you're adding more people? And how do you stabilize the culture so as you add people, they fit into it and so they're not destructive in it?
yes,
Right? So the way we do that is understanding the strategy, understanding the identity of the business, and then doing everything we can to support and uphold that identity, going back to it, direction setting from the identity, allowing the identity to anchor us, and then moving forward in the business in the direction that it's really primed to go, and not moving away from that. Because often most founders have a million different ideas every day,
yeah,
and they are driven. And so then they try to execute on all of those, but only a handful of those ideas are going to fit in with this business today. So it's like a balance between flexibility and knowing where you're at and where you can go, like what the constraints of this business are, and then
Yes.
do you need to start something different? You know,
Yeah,
which you
that's
can, but you have to be able to hand things off. So and that's where process comes in.
Yeah, the constraints are defined by, so of course their strategy, but also their culture and things of their values and like, yeah, okay. What challenges have you seen as you've gone into these businesses in them working with you, or the challenges that you've seen with the businesses kind of incorporating some of your strategic thoughts?
The biggest challenge I see is lack of clarity. So founders that they started their business for a reason. They know what that reason was 5 or 10 or whatever years ago. They aren't sure what it is now, and then they're having a hard time getting clarity on what it is they're actually trying to accomplish today. So clarity, fear is always a challenge for any human anywhere, right? And then in the space of working with founders, a lot of it is fear of not being able to hand things off appropriately, which is answered by process, but then they're afraid of process for reasons aforementioned. So, and then past that, I would say the challenge of just not knowing how to manage themselves effectively so they're not throwing off the team. So that's something that we work on a lot, is what's the dynamic of the team? Am I coming in as the founder and just trying to maintain by lighting fires, or am I gently fanning into flame things that need to be gently fanned into flame? So working on some of those skills so they can manage themselves appropriately and then thus manage the team better.
Yeah. Can I ask one more question? Is that all right? Oh no. No, hold on. Okay, I got it. Okay, so thinking about those challenges, and thinking about continuous improvement, right? What are you doing based off of these lessons learned, and what are you doing to continuously improve?
So I'm always asking myself, am I answering the need? Am I answering the questions that people have that they need answered? That's a question I'm always asking myself, which has recently brought me into the space of what is it that business founders need? What resources do they need? And that has led me to develop, one of the things I offer is RCA training, so root cause analysis. And this is really for teams and entrepreneurs. This is a continuous improvement skill set that allows you to approach problems in a way that allows you to actually get solutions, as opposed to dealing with the symptom. We're dealing with the actual root cause of the problem. So, and that goes back to thinking. It's all about thinking. It's all about the questions you're asking, how you're asking them, what kind of information are you getting, that sort of thing. And so anything that I'm taking my clients through, I'm also asking of myself, because I feel if I'm not asking that of myself, I can't ask it of them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
yeah, I love that.
It's easy to start to fall into that trap though, right? You deliver it to many clients, you like autopilot, whatever. But it sounds like that's really important too, actually, that you're doing it for yourself and you're really reflecting.
Well, and it's always challenging to kind of put yourself on the hot seat and say, okay, how can I do this better? How do I need to be thinking differently? It's so easy to get stuck in ruts just as a human being.
Yeah.
And then things move so quickly. So, yeah.
So I can imagine I'm kind of curious, if we had longer, it'd be like, what type of methodologies do you use? What type of techniques? Is it design thinking? Is Is it interviews? Is it? I mean, I suspect you use all of that. But is there anything that you want to kind of call out, or anything that's unique around your approach about thinking, like resetting people's thought processes? Yeah.
Assumptions.
Yeah.
So the thing I start with right off the bat is asking people, what assumptions are you making? You're always making assumptions. We go into every situation with assumptions that we're making. And if we're able to be aware of the assumptions, then we can start asking good questions. If we can't be aware of the assumptions, we're going to bring them into our problem solving. We're going to bring them into our planning. We're going to bring them into the relationship discussion we're having tomorrow. You know, like, we can't get away from them, but if we can be aware of them, then they can be something that we can set aside and be more effective in our thinking. So that's where I always start. And the other thing is that there's a lot of tools. You can always train people on tools, but if you don't address the thinking, people can't use the tools properly.
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
So challenging earlier on your assumptions, right? Testing them, validating them, discarding ones that don't matter. Wow, we could have I'd love to have had a longer conversation.
Yeah, I wonder if, because it would be cool to go into that, like what you were just talking about, like where do you go from assumptions, and then just take us through your process. I think would have been, maybe we can do a follow-up.
And some of our background, all of us actually are in product discovery, product management, product design. Somehow we started a podcast as well, but that's kind of our background. That's why we're kind of, our brains are ticking now. And also within culture, how do you design for culture, or at least amplify the good things about culture? So between two questions here, going forward, like, are there new things that you're trying to instigate in your part of your vision for clients, or is it kind of business as usual? You know, nothing new coming up that you need at the moment? Is there something new you want to talk about that you want to implement? And then maybe some advice for our audience in a moment. And
probably how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. So I have two things that are in development right now. Well, one just launched. So I've got a series of card decks, which I brought one.
Card decks.
Love
card decks.
Fantastic.
So, and this is the Entrepreneur's Reflection deck. And this is a deck of 52 cards that are for entrepreneurs who don't have time for books. Because I found that entrepreneurs, they love reading. They love the idea of reading, but they don't have time to sit down and wade through a book. So I developed this card deck. It's concepts about business and inspiration for how to work in your business better, that are just bite-sized concepts with an action attached to it, so that you can take the thing, think about it, reflect, and then be like, where do I put this in practice in my business today or this week? Ideally, you do one each week. You can use it with your team, you can use it with whoever, you can use it by yourself. And I'm really excited about that, because I think that the more people I can get that into their hands, the better equipped they are, because most founders don't have an MBA, and nor do they necessarily need one, but they find themselves stymied by not having access to concepts.
Right, they need a shortcut to the stuff that matters.
Right, and then I'm developing two other decks. One is the change management deck and the continuous improvement deck, for the same reason that entrepreneurs need these concepts, but they're not going to go take a change management certification course. They're not going to go get certified in continuous improvement, whatever. So these ideas are life-changing. They change the scope of the business, the life of the business, the health of the team. So I'm really excited about that series. And then the other thing is I'm putting together a basic course for how to approach critical thinking in business for entrepreneurs and teams. So
that's awesome.
I'm really excited about those things.
Fantastic.
And so where do people find?
My website is tbd-strategies.com, and then I'm on LinkedIn as Taryn Davis and TBD Strategies. So,
great. When are you writing a book?
Well, I thought I was going to be a novelist for most of my life.
Right.
So I do write, but I'm sort of not sure how to deal with the publishing industry, because if you write a book, you're starting a business. In a way,
unless you just want it for, a calling card or whatever. Right. But if you're really serious about it, it's a business, isn't it? Right.
And so I think the decks are the precursor to that, and kind of understanding what book would people need written. I'm really trying to understand what book do people need, because again, like, if I feel like people don't necessarily have time to wade through a book, I don't care to put useless information in people's hands. So I want it to be accessible. I want them to be able to take it and do something with it right off the bat, and be gratified by the experience of interacting with it.
Yeah.
So the last question.
2 questions. So I'll ask this one, and you can ask the next one.
Okay, I got it.
So what has Kiln's role been in you building your business?
And do you work out of Kiln?
Yes, and Funnily, I'm from Boulder. I came to this kiln, I think, right when they opened it. And I wasn't quite ready to be in a co-working space, but I loved it. I thought it was amazing. And then I went up to Idaho in Meridian to do sort of a working sabbatical up there. That's where I joined Kiln. And it's just such an incredible community. And I think the space is inspiring. Everyone is friendly. It is just like you're surrounded by people who are doing what they are best equipped to do, and it makes you want to do what you're best equipped to do. So,
love it.
That's right. Now my brain's connected the fact that the directors weren't sure which one you were at. Are you sure that you want to come all the way down here for the interview?
Right.
Oh, we had logistics stuff going on.
Well, she's from Meridian.
Got it.
So the last question, I think, for our audience, we like to ask this question around what does it take to create a movement? What does it take to create something that never existed before? What's your advice from your experience? I know it's a big...
Before we get into the rest of the episode, we want to thank the partners and sponsors who made the Kiln Road Trip possible. The Kiln Road Trip is brought to you by Kiln. Kiln is a boutique co-working and flex office community with 13 locations in 6 states across the West, dedicated to providing innovative workspaces that empower your team to thrive. Whether you're a solo visionary or an enterprise-level team of up to 100, Kiln transcends being merely a place to work. It's a hub for learning and connecting with like-minded professionals that will make you and your team love where you work.
And if you haven't stepped foot inside a kiln yet, you really need to. On this road trip, we visited every single location, and trust us when we say once you see these beautifully designed spaces, meet the talented team, and connect with fellow members, you won't want to work anywhere else.
Locations include Utah, Colorado, Idaho, Oregon, California, and Arizona. And they're growing too, with multiple locations set to open in 2024.
Yeah, so be sure to check out the kiln locations nearest you by booking a tour at kiln.com and answer Swell in the question, how did you hear about us? Once you complete the tour, you'll be entered into a competition where you could win a 1-year membership, their club membership at Kiln.
Yep, you heard that. That's kiln.com, book a tour, and be sure to mention Swell in the question, how did you hear about us?
The Kiln Road Trip is also brought to you by Moterra Campervans, a luxury campervan rental company for iconic road trips. Their top-of-the-line vans are available at 7 locations located near America's best outdoor adventure destinations. They have consistently earned the highest customer ratings in the industry, making Moterra Campervans your gateway to adventure without sacrificing on comfort or service.
That's true, and initially we wanted to take this journey in a 1960s VW bus, but thankfully we found Moterra instead. With 3 van options, we took the Pop Top Classic, which sleeps 4 and is best for those who want to maximize floor space and storage. This was critical for us because it needed to sleep the entire crew, we needed space to edit, and we were traveling with large amounts of equipment, luggage, and, other goodies that we picked up along the way.
And this van took us through all 3,580 miles of the trip. Super comfortable and sweet to drive.
And actually, Moterra offers fully planned itineraries if you'd rather leave the planning to someone else.
Visit gomoterra.com/swell. That's gomoterra.com/swell.
This episode is also brought to you by Taurus. Taurus is leading the charge in home energy storage. Taurus makes it easy to achieve energy independence and a greener tomorrow. The Taurus station provides everything you need to generate clean power, efficiently store electricity, and easily manage your energy use.
And installing a Taurus station offers plenty of benefits, including save money on your electricity bill,
also ensure energy security with backup power during outages,
reduce carbon emissions with renewables.
You can also automate EV charging and HVAC systems with 100% renewables,
and enjoy unrivaled system monitoring and support.
If you like the sound of those benefits, get a quote to build your Taurus station in less than 30 seconds. Super easy at taurus.co. That's TORUS.co. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Question.
Oh, it's a fantastic question because I think you're either growing or you're dead. And if you're creating something that hasn't existed before, and that's what founders are all doing, we're all creating something that hasn't existed before. And I think it really boils down to how you're thinking about it. And are you challenging yourself to continue to create something that hasn't existed before? Are you tired? What do you need to take care of yourself if you're tired? What do you need to be inspired to keep creating? what is standing in the way, being aware of how you are feeling in that space to be able to take care of whatever that is, so you can create more space to go create that thing that hasn't existed yet. And I love how you phrase that, because I think about it that way every day.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Kiln Road Trip. Be sure to follow along on the rest of the journey, and you can do that in 2 ways. 1, subscribe to the podcast, whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or maybe even watching on YouTube, and follow along on all of our social media platforms, whether you're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or TikTok, at the Swell Pod. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode.